The sun begins to set, and a warm golden light covers the family's beautiful garden. Lucy, an 8-week pregnant golden retriever, is wandering around a yard, running happily. We see a moment of true peace and happiness. Lucy wags her tail, her eyes filled with love for her family, while her owner, a middle-aged woman named Maria, is working in the garden. The sky is clear and blue, and the air is gentle. However, something strange is starting to happen. When Maria turns around to check on Lucy again, she notices that the dog is no longer in the yard. A gentle breeze blows, and Lucy seems to have disappeared into thin air. Maria feels a wave of anxiety rising in her heart. Lucy? Where is Lucy? Maria calls out, but there is no response. Maria starts to run around the yard, looking into hidden corners, checking the surrounding trees, and immediately a fear spreads through her. No way, it can't go anywhere without telling me, Maria thought to herself, but a strange sense of unease kept her from sitting still. Meanwhile, Lucy was moving silently out of the garden. She felt something strange in her body. Painful contractions had begun, suggesting that she was about to give birth. Lucy couldn't understand why her body was reacting like this, but a strong sense of unease overcame everything. Her eyes were filled with fear as she looked back at the garden, as if a vague voice inside her was telling her, "We need to find a safer place." Lucy turned and ran into the woods near her house, where she had always felt safe and quiet. A place where no one would bother her. A place where she could give birth to her puppies without worrying about anything. Everything had happened so quickly, and in Lucy's mind, going out into the garden wasn't a bad decision. It was an instinctive reaction. She felt that at this moment, the outside world might be the only place where she could feel safe while pregnant. Maria had no idea that Lucy had left the yard. She started calling louder, trying to search all over the garden, even going to the small forest behind the house. Fear rose in Maria's heart when she couldn't find Lucy's figure anywhere. How did she leave? She would never leave like that, she thought, extremely worried. Not to mention, Lucy was pregnant and might have difficulty moving. Maria began to feel heartbroken and kept blaming herself, wondering if it was because she was too subjective that she let Lucy go out alone. She probably just went out to play for a bit and will come back. Maria tried to convince herself, but her voice became weaker and weaker as she went deeper into the forest, calling Lucy's name again. She couldn't believe that the lovely dog that she had treated like her own child could disappear without a trace. Lucy was now deep in the forest. She felt lost and alone, but everything in her mind was focused on one thing: finding a place to give birth. The pain was getting more and more obvious. Lucy found a large tree, where there was shade and quiet, and she decided to lie down there. A few times she stood up and fell back down, partly because of the pain, partly because of the anxiety. But she didn't stop because her motherly instinct told her to keep going. Maria searched the forest, her legs tired, but her heart filled with anxiety. She was worried not only for Lucy, but also for the baby that she knew would be born in a few days. Would Lucy be able to give birth safely? Would she be able to protect herself and the puppies without anyone around? Maria started calling animal rescue organizations and friends, asking for help. But inside, she had an unquenchable feeling. Did anyone know where Lucy was? Would someone save the beloved dog before it was too late? The first scene of this part is Maria standing in front of her window, looking out at the garden, which is now quiet. The gentle wind makes the branches of the trees sway, but Lucy has not returned. Anxiety wells up inside Maria, making her unable to sit still. Every time the sunlight fades, Maria feels like time is passing very slowly. The days of searching are starting to become tiring, and her heart aches every time she thinks about the danger that could happen to Lucy, especially since she is pregnant. Maria cannot help but feel uneasy as each day passes without any sign of Lucy. Calls, meetings with close friends in the neighborhood, all of which are of no help. She begins to wonder if she has been naive in not thinking of protecting Lucy more carefully. But a part of Maria still held out hope that Lucy would return, because she believed that the love and connection between her and Lucy was too strong to be broken. Maria decided to continue searching tirelessly. Every morning, she woke up early, carrying warm towels to wrap around her neck, a small bag of food and water. She walked along the familiar path, calling Lucy's name softly, hoping that her call would reach the dog's ears. Although Maria's eyes were red from lack of sleep, she did not want to give up. While Maria persisted in searching, Lucy was facing a great challenge. The labor pains came suddenly and were more intense than Lucy had imagined. When she found a safe place under a large tree in the forest, Lucy only had enough strength to lie down, gasping and curling up from the pain. Part of her wanted to call for help, but it seemed too much for a wild animal like her. However, as the labor pains began, a strange feeling came over Lucy. She felt a magical connection to the little creatures forming inside her. Each contraction was a reminder that this was her job as a mother, and she had to protect her puppies at all costs. Even though she was in the middle of the woods, far from the family she knew, Lucy knew she would never put them in danger. The excruciating pain made Lucy weak, but at the same time it also stirred a strong resilience. She felt the movement of the puppies in her belly and felt even more responsible to find a safe place to give birth. Lucy was no longer a carefree dog. She had become a mother, ready to face any hardship and challenge to ensure her children were born in a safe environment. She lay still in the shade, worrying about the future, about whether she could go through this labor alone. But at that moment, a strong wave of maternal love rose up in Lucy's heart. She knew that no matter what, she would do her best to protect the newborn. Meanwhile, Maria did not give up. She continued to walk through the streets, calling Lucy's name more urgently. Every time she came to the forest, Maria's heart became heavier, but she did not allow herself to give up. She even went to animal rescue stations, asking the surrounding people if they had seen Lucy. But everyone shook their heads. Maria's friends also tried their best, searching with her, but Lucy was still missing. A day passed, and Maria felt like she was falling into a state of despair. Although she kept searching, her fear for Lucy's safety grew stronger and stronger. During these difficult moments, Maria had to face questions that were not easy to answer. Could Lucy give birth safely? Can she bear the loneliness and pain without anyone by her side? When night fell, Maria returned home, but this day was different. She could not look at the empty garden without feeling a pang in her heart. As the days passed, loneliness began to creep into her heart, but she would not allow herself to give up. Maria knew that no matter what, she would continue searching until she found Lucy. It had been 5 days since Lucy disappeared, and Maria had still not found her. Her anxiety continued to grow as she walked through the woods, calling Lucy's name in vain. But today, a miracle was about to happen, a discovery that would change everything. Early one morning, as Maria walked along the familiar path near the woods, she suddenly heard a strange sound. It was a weak bark, but full of determination. Maria stopped, her heart suddenly filled with hope. She hurriedly ran towards the sound, and after a few minutes of searching, Maria saw a scene that made her heart clench. Lucy, in a state of exhaustion and pain, was lying on a thick layer of leaves under a large tree. But beside her were not only puppies, but also a small stray dog. This dog had messy fur, was skinny and dirty, but its eyes contained a rare resilience. The little dog did not leave Lucy, but stayed by her side to protect the puppies, as if it was taking responsibility for taking care of this new family. When Maria saw this scene, an indescribable feeling welled up in her heart. Not only was it the joy of finding Lucy, but was also deeply moved by the love between animals, especially the great loyalty of the stray dog to Lucy and the puppies. The stray dog, after going through many difficult and lonely days, finally found a place to live, but it could not ignore Lucy's situation. The little dog, although hurt and tired, did not abandon its new friend in trouble. Scruff felt Lucy's pain and did not want her to suffer alone. Something in Scruff's mind had changed. It no longer lived for itself, but also for the safety and protection of Lucy and the puppies. Maria approached Lucy, calling her name softly. "Lucy, is that you?" she said, her voice choked. She slowly walked towards the little dog and gently called Scruff, hoping that the animal would not be afraid and let her come closer. Scruff, although still a little hesitant, saw the gentleness in Maria's eyes and gradually relaxed, no longer as alert as before. Maria reached out and patted it gently, as if this was a family member she had been waiting for. Lucy, tired and weak, stood up at Maria's call. She crouched down, trying to walk towards her master, and slowly approached. She felt the peace and safety of her master, and her heart swelled with emotion when she saw Maria standing there, ready to protect her and the puppies. Maria couldn't help but feel moved when she saw Scruff caring for Lucy and the puppies. "Thank you, Scruff," Maria whispered, And even though the little dog couldn't understand her words, he could feel the affection in Maria's voice. A special connection was formed between them immediately. Scruff was not a wild animal, but a loyal friend, a protector who had chosen this family as his home. Maria looked at Lucy, then at Scruff, and finally bent down to touch the puppies lying in the dry leaves. She knew that, although the situation started out tragically, the family had gained a precious gift, the unwavering love and loyalty of Scruff, the stray dog who had now become a family member. Maria, Lucy, Scruff, and the puppies were slowly returning home, where they would find the protection, love, and care they needed. Scruff might feel shy at first, but when he saw the caregivers of Maria's warm gestures, he began to open up. Scruff was no longer afraid. He found a real home where love and care would always surround him. Scruff felt a change in his soul. Being protected and cared for was something completely new to him. In the past, Scruff had just survived day by day without knowing anything about love and care. But now, when he saw Maria smile, when he slept peacefully next to the puppies, he felt something very different. Scruff was no longer just a stray dog, but a full member of the family. After returning home, Maria took care of Lucy, Scruff, and the puppies with all her love and patience. She cleaned up the garden area to create a safe space for this new family, and gradually they began to integrate into the family life. But for Scruff, becoming a part of the family was not easy. At first, Scruff was still a bit reserved. Although he gradually learned to trust Maria and Lucy, everything was still new and strange to this stray dog. Maria's affectionate gestures made Scruff feel confused, but he could not deny one thing: the feeling of security that he had never had during all his years living on the streets. Every time Maria tried to pet Scruff, he would shy away a little, but then gradually come closer. Scruff lived in a state of always having to protect himself, always doubting everything around him. He had been abandoned, and so Scruff's trust in humans was fragile. Although Maria was gentle and kind, Scruff could not forget the days of living in fear and loneliness. He felt that hugs and caresses were strange, as if he did not deserve them. In the early days, Scruff just stood from afar, observing Lucy and the puppies, as if he was not ready to become part of the family. Scruff saw the love Maria had for the puppies, and he began to understand that this was not a temporary situation. But his gaze was still a bit suspicious. Maria recognized Scruff's hesitation and did not want to force him. She knew that everything needed time. During the first days, Maria just needed to be patient, letting Scruff freely integrate in his own way. She did not rush into building a relationship. As the days passed, Maria let Scruff explore the house freely and felt the safety she provided. Maria always paid attention to every little move of Scruff. She noticed that Scruff still kept a certain distance, but his eyes gradually became softer when looking at her. Occasionally, Scruff would lie close to Maria, but still refused to let her touch him. However, with patience, Maria knew that one day Scruff would open up to her, just like Lucy had done before. Lucy, although tired after a long time of wandering and giving birth, was always the one who protected and took care of the puppies. However, Lucy also noticed a change in Scruff. He was no longer the stray dog that used to live on the street, but was gradually becoming a member of the family. Lucy felt happy to see Scruff slowly becoming more comfortable. She also understood that Scruff was going through a huge change, just like she herself had when she first entered this family life. Lucy, with her motherly instincts, not only cared for her children, but also helped Scruff feel accepted. She did not speak, but Lucy's affectionate and protective gestures were an important part of helping Scruff regain his sense of security. Sometimes, when Scruff sat near the puppies, Lucy would gently lick Scruff's head as a sign of sympathy and friendship. After a week of living in Maria's loving care, Scruff began to show small changes. One morning, when Maria was preparing food for the whole family of dogs, she gently placed a bowl of food on the ground near Scruff. Scruff, for the first time, did not shy away, but walked over to the bowl and ate naturally. When Maria stood near, Scruff did not run away anymore, but only looked at her curiously. At the end of the day, Maria sat down next to Scruff, gently reaching out her hand. Scruff looked at her for a moment and then turned his head, but this time he did not leave. Maria waited in silence, and after a minute, Scruff slowly approached, lightly licking Maria's hand as an experimental action. Maria smiled, gently stroking Scruff's head. This warm feeling seemed to be a turning point in their relationship. Scruff began to understand that not all humans were the same. Maria was not someone who would hurt him, but someone who would care for him. He felt genuine love and care for Maria and Lucy. One day, Scruff spontaneously approached Maria while she was resting in the garden, and rested his head on her leg as if seeking protection. Maria patted Scruff with a gentle smile. This was a clear sign of trust, a sense of security that Scruff had never felt before. One morning, while Maria was feeding the dogs breakfast, a strange sound came from the distance. Maria stopped and listened. A soft barking came from outside the garden. Lucy, Scruff, and the puppies had eaten their fill and were resting in a quiet area of the yard. The whole family seemed to sense a change in the atmosphere. The sunlight was filtering through the trees, but there seemed to be a strange figure lurking at the edge of the garden. Maria looked out the window, and then she saw a stray dog, a dog with shaggy, disheveled fur, with eyes staring at her from outside the fence. This dog was not like Scruff. It had a strong appearance, but also a look of suspicion and fear. Maria cautiously stepped outside, her heart pounding at the sight of the animal. This stray dog, whom Maria called Jack, looked at her with suspicion. Jack did not approach, but stood at a distance, wary. He had lived through lonely and harsh days on the streets, and had learned that trusting people could lead to hurt. Jack's fur was dirty, dusty, and his body was thin as if he had been starved of food. However, his eyes contained something special, a desire to be trusted, to be accepted, even though he could not open up immediately. Jack had been hurt in the past. He did not want to experience abandonment again. So even though Maria was friendly and gentle, Jack kept his distance. Part of him was afraid that this human's appearance would be just a game, a lie. Everything around him made Jack feel insecure, and he just stood there, not daring to approach. Maria saw the doubt in Jack's eyes and decided not to force him. She did not rush towards him, but stopped at a safe distance, patting him with a gentle gesture. Maria tried to speak to Jack in a deep, warm voice. "I won't hurt you, don't worry." However, Jack remained still, just watching her from afar. Maria gently bent down, looking into the eyes of the stray dog with all her patience. She knew that it would take time to build trust with Jack. But she felt a strange connection from this animal, and despite its hesitation, she was sure that Jack was looking for a safe place to belong. Jack's heart was always haunted by fear. He remembered the times he was chased away from his old homes, the times he was stoned by children, or chased away by people who had no compassion. Jack couldn't forget his past, and every time he encountered a human, he felt the tension rise in his body. However, a part of Jack sensed something different about Maria. She wasn't like the others. She didn't rush to get close, but stood still, waiting for the animal to decide. Jack began to feel a little lighter, a comfort that he had never felt before. He still did not dare to approach, but he no longer felt as scared as before. As the days passed, Maria continued to create opportunities for Jack to integrate. She placed food near where Jack stood, but never tried to approach. This helped Jack feel that he was not threatened. Every day, Maria moved closer, giving Jack a little food, a look full of concern. Gradually, Jack began to move closer to eat without retreating. Although still shy, Jack no longer kept a great distance as before. One afternoon, when Jack finished eating, he looked at Maria with a new look. The fear in his eyes gradually disappeared, replaced by a little curiosity and hope. Jack stood there, not in a hurry to leave, but just stood still looking at Maria. And for the first time, Maria felt a change in Jack's eyes, a sign of trust. Meanwhile, Scruff and Lucy watched from a corner of the garden. Scruff, who had once been a stray dog, sensed Jack's anxiety. He didn't rush to Jack right away, but just stood there watching from a distance. Scruff understood Jack's feelings, loneliness and doubt. However, the peace and security of this family might be what Jack was looking for. Lucy, with her motherly instincts, just stood there with a knowing look, as if telling Scruff that everything would be okay. Stray dogs can always find sympathy for each other. At first, Jack just sat and watched as Lucy and Scruff played together, but gradually he began to try to approach. Although he still didn't fully integrate right away, each day Jack got closer, no longer just an observer, but became a small part of this family. One day, when Scruff and Lucy were running around in the yard, Jack approached them, but still kept his distance. Scruff, understandingly, did not attack or chase Jack away, but simply greeted Jack gently with a wagging of his tail. Spring has come, bringing with it gentle breezes and clear skies. The fresh air of the early days of the season makes Maria's family happier than ever. After a few weeks of living together, the dogs have gradually gotten used to each other. Jack, although still a little reserved, has begun to show positive signs. He no longer avoids Maria or Lucy like before. Jack's eyes seem to have softened, and he is starting to get used to the new family space. Today, Maria is standing in the yard, watching the dogs play in the garden. Scruff and Lucy are playing with each other in the sunlight, but Jack is still standing alone in a hidden corner of the garden. Maria walks over and gently calls, "Jack, come here to Mommy." She calls in a gentle, unhurried voice. Jack raises his head, looks at Maria for a moment, then turns back with a curious look. After a moment of hesitation, Jack starts walking towards Maria. Now, Jack no longer felt afraid whenever Maria approached. Although he was a little hesitant, he mostly felt safe around her. Although Jack's past had left many scars, he began to realize that things could be different in this family. He no longer felt threatened by the presence of humans. Although he was still a little wary, Jack's eyes were no longer cold, but warm and gentle. As Jack approached Maria, she reached out and gently stroked the dog's head. It was a small action, but it could be considered an important turning point in their relationship. Jack did not back away, nor did he hesitate, but began to lick Maria's hand gently. It was a sign of trust. Although Jack was not completely at ease, he no longer felt lonely. Maria looked into Jack's eyes, feeling the change in his gaze. "We will always be with you, don't worry," Maria whispered. Although those words may not have meant much to Jack at the time, she knew that time would help the animal feel the love and care it needed. Over the next few days, Maria continued to let Jack be free, not forcing him to settle in too quickly. She always let Jack feel that he could come closer when he felt comfortable. And every time Jack approached Maria, he was met with loving caresses, making Jack feel that he had found a home. A place where there was no fear, only peace. Meanwhile, Scruff and Lucy continued to be Jack's close friends. Scruff, with a similar past to Jack, showed empathy and helped Jack to integrate. Scruff no longer saw Jack as a stranger, but accepted the dog as a new friend. He often invited Jack to join in the games in the garden, even though Jack was still not fully integrated. Lucy also played an important role in this process. She always watched the puppies, but also constantly observed Jack's development. Although she did not speak, Lucy understood that each dog had its own process of finding trust and security. With Lucy's peace and love, Jack felt comforted. Every time Jack saw Lucy cuddling the puppies, he realized that there was something very special in the way these animals loved and protected each other. Gradually, Jack began to change. The signs of fear were no longer evident. It no longer avoided Maria's attention, and sometimes it took the initiative to come closer to be petted. In the early days, just Maria standing near would make Jack take a step back, but now it has found peace in her gentle gestures. Sometimes when Maria sits on a chair in the garden, Jack will rest his head on her lap as a silent thank you, a sign of complete trust. Maria clearly feels the change in Jack's actions. The patience she has given him is starting to pay off. Although she knows that this process cannot happen overnight, she understands that only love and patience can make Jack feel safe and loved. She is always gentle with Jack, not rushing him, but just giving him time to understand that this family is a place where he can belong. She often spends time sitting with Jack, along with Scruff and Lucy. Each animal has a role in this family. Maria looked at her dogs with love and patience in her eyes, telling herself that her family had grown so much and would continue to grow in love and togetherness. Jack lay under the tree, near Maria, Scruff, and Lucy. Although Jack was not yet fully integrated like the other dogs, he had begun to trust and accept his new life. The gentle afternoon sunlight shone into the garden, creating a peaceful atmosphere. Jack, although still quiet at times, now felt like he was part of this family. Maria sat there, stroking Jack's knee, a small but caring act. She knew that, although Jack's journey was not over, he had taken an important step forward, that of opening up and trusting. This family, with all its love and protection, would be where Jack would find peace in the years to come. One gloomy morning, with a light rain falling, Maria sat inside the house, next to a cup of warm coffee. Lucy, Scruff, and Jack were resting after hours of running around in the garden. She looked out the window and noticed a blurry figure moving in the garden in the distance. Maria frowned slightly, unable to believe her eyes, and she stood up immediately to see what it was. As Maria stepped outside, a stray dog came into her sight, a dog with grayish-black fur, covered in mud and a wild appearance. It moved very cautiously, as if searching for a safe place. This dog was not like Scruff or Jack. It had an appearance of timidity and caution. Its steps were slow, stopping every now and then to look around as if afraid of being discovered. Maria sensed the doubt in this dog's eyes, and she slowly walked towards it, not making any sudden movements to avoid scaring it. This stray dog was Shadow. Shadow was a dog who had lived through many years of hardship and loneliness. He was not like the other dogs Maria had saved before. The deep suspicion and fear still lingered in Shadow's mind. Even though he had seen other dogs living in this family, Shadow could not easily accept safety. Every gesture from humans or other animals made him feel anxious and wary. Shadow was not a stray dog who trusted easily. For too long, Shadow had to fight to survive on his own in a world without love. He had to stay away from enemies, not only humans but also ferocious dogs. Everything around him made him unable to open up. Even when Maria approached, Shadow still stood far away from her, his eyes filled with suspicion. Maria noticed the fear in Shadow's eyes, and she decided not to rush. She gently said, "Oh, it's okay. Mom won't hurt you." She didn't reach out or step closer right away. Instead, she stood there, slowly observing Shadow, letting him feel more secure. A few minutes passed, and Maria noticed that Shadow still didn't move, but his eyes no longer held the fear they had before. Instead, his gaze seemed more curious. Maria knew that building trust with Shadow would take time, but she was willing to be patient. She gave the dog space, not forcing him into any situation he didn't want to be in. Scruff and Jack were watching from afar, and both of them could feel Shadow's anxiety. Scruff, though newly rescued, had gone through a lot of hardships in the past, and he understood the loneliness that Shadow was going through. Scruff didn't run toward Shadow to force him, but just stood still and wagged his tail as if sending a signal that this was a safe place. Jack, although still a little wary, had changed a lot since joining the family, and now he was trying to help Shadow by not making him feel threatened. Lucy didn't do anything suddenly either. She stood watching from afar, but Lucy's eyes were filled with sympathy. With her motherly instincts, Lucy understood that every dog had a process of integration. She didn't force anything on Shadow, but just her kind looks were enough to make Shadow feel safe. After a few days, Shadow gradually began to lessen his vigilance. Every day, Maria went out with some food and left it near the area where Shadow often went. She didn't touch it, just left the food at a distance that Shadow felt comfortable with. Gradually, Shadow began to come closer, and no longer felt as scared as before. One morning, Maria decided to try letting Shadow eat from her hand. She placed a piece of food on her palm, didn't move, and looked at Shadow. When the stray dog came closer, Maria felt her heart pounding. Shadow stood for a long time, looking at Maria's hand, then finally, he gently took the food and swallowed it. Maria felt a distinct change in Shadow's actions. It was the first sign of trust. Shadow was no longer the stray dog who lived only for himself. He began to realize that in this family, there were other animals that could share love. Although there were still many doubts and worries, Shadow no longer felt lonely. He began to interact more with Scruff and Jack, playing with them in the garden, although sometimes he kept his distance. Maria noticed that Shadow's integration process was not the same as the previous dogs, but each step he took was an important one. Maria was in no hurry, and she felt proud of this change. It was a small victory, but a meaningful one. Although he was not yet fully integrated into the family, it was possible to feel that Shadow was starting to find a place to belong. Maria sat next to the dogs, her eyes soft on Shadow as he slowly approached her and lay down beside her. A sense of peace filled the air, and a new family was slowly forming, although there were many challenges ahead. Spring has sprung everywhere. The trees are budding, and the sky is clear as if there has never been a gloomy rain. Everything in Maria's family seems to be gradually returning to peace. Lucy, Scruff, Jack, and the puppies live in love, care, and even waiting, and Shadow, the stray dog with a painful past, is also starting to come out of his shell. Although it cannot be denied that Shadow still has deep psychological wounds, signs of trust are gradually appearing. Every day, Maria spends time walking with Shadow in the garden, even though he is still not completely open to her. Every time Shadow sees Maria with a suspicious look, Maria gently pats him, not forcing him, just letting this animal decide for itself. Maria realizes that every change, no matter how small, is valuable, and she knows that her patience will not be wasted. Shadow gradually begins to trust the space around him. She no longer had to be afraid every time Maria approached. At first, Shadow would just stand still when Maria approached, but now he started to take small steps, walking towards her without fear. He no longer ran away every time someone approached, but instead, he looked at them with a thoughtful look, as if he was starting to accept that this was a place where he could be safe. During the morning walks, Maria noticed that Shadow's eyes were no longer as alert as before. Although he was still a little nervous when encountering new situations, trust was gradually forming. Shadow was no longer alone. Between the other dogs and Maria, he had found a real family. Whenever Jack and Scruff played nearby, Shadow gradually became more sociable, sometimes even joining in the game. Scruff, with his past, could sense Shadow's anxiety. He had been lonely, abandoned, but now Scruff understood Shadow's feelings. Though sometimes shy, Scruff patiently stayed by Shadow's side, not attacking or forcing him to fit in. Scruff often stood close to Shadow, closing his eyes and lying next to him, creating a sense of peace. Jack, though still keeping his distance at times, also realized that Shadow was changing. Jack was no longer just a stray dog like he had been at first. He had found peace in his family, and now he had become a role model for Shadow. Occasionally, Jack would run over to Shadow and wag his tail, as a way of welcoming his integration. Maria sat by the dogs one evening, watching the sun set over the horizon. Each animal in this family had its own story, but they had all found a place to belong. In that moment, Maria clearly felt that this family was not just the animals she cared for, but also the friends she had adopted, friends who were learning to love and protect each other. Maria knew that Shadow's journey was not over, and that there would be more difficult steps ahead, but she felt proud of the progress the dog had made. It was not a race, but a long journey in which every small step counted. She gently stroked Shadow's head and felt a strong empathy from the animal. Although he could not speak, Shadow's eyes said it all. "Thank you for waiting for me," Maria thought. One day, while everyone was playing in the garden, Maria could not believe her eyes. Shadow, with a slightly hesitant step, started running after the other dogs. Scruff and Jack led the way, and Lucy followed gently, but Shadow was no longer standing still. He joined the chase, although his steps were not as steady as the other dogs. However, it was a big step forward. With each step, Shadow felt a sense of freedom and happiness that he had not experienced in all his years on the streets. Shadow no longer felt like an outsider. As the dogs played in the sunlight, he joined in the game naturally, albeit with some reservations. But most importantly, Shadow no longer felt afraid. It was a happy moment, not only for Shadow, but for the whole family. Maria stood watching, a gentle smile on her face. She didn't need to say anything, because the scene before her eyes said it all. Shadow had found a family, a place where he could be himself, a place without fear or loneliness. The sense of security Shadow found in this family helped him open up, and in the love of Maria, Lucy, Scruff, and Jack, Shadow learned to trust. Shadow, still a little nervous but no longer alone, lay between Scruff and Jack, constantly feeling the warmth and security that this family provided. Maria sat beside him, looking at her dogs with pride and happiness. This was the family she had created, a family not just based on blood, but also on love, patience, and trust. One evening, as the sky was just turning dark, Maria's family was once again faced with an unexpected appearance. Lucy, Scruff, Jack, and Shadow were lying in the garden, relaxing after a long day of playing. Suddenly, a strong bark rang out from outside the fence. Unlike the previous barks, this one was confident and determined. Maria stopped, turned her head to look at the source of the sound, a feeling of anxiety and curiosity welling up in her heart. As she stepped outside, the figure of a large dog appeared before her eyes. It was a bull mastiff with a huge body, short yellow-brown fur, and bright eyes, but its face did not look easy to approach. This dog was clearly a stray dog, but it did not seem to have been there recently. It looked at Maria with a determined gaze, but kept a certain distance, as if assessing the situation. Maria stood still, waiting, not daring to make any sudden moves. Titan, as she called it, stood still, watching her for a long time, then finally came closer, but only enough to observe, not rushing to get closer. Titan's gaze contained an undeniable loneliness, but also strength and self-control. Titan was a dog unlike Scruff, Jack, or Shadow. Having lived in an environment with training and care for humans, Titan was not a cynical stray dog. However, life in the wild had changed him. Titan had learned to be independent and become a strong dog, no longer dependent on anyone. However, signs of deep loneliness remained. Titan knew that life was not easy, and in his mind, strength sometimes came with loneliness. When he saw Maria, Titan did not feel fear, but also did not feel complete trust. He observed her with caution, as if assessing whether he could trust this human. Titan was not a dog that accepted affection easily, and he was used to facing all challenges on his own. However, when he looked at the animals around Maria, especially Scruff, Jack, and Shadow, Titan realized that there was something different here, a harmony, a family that he had never had. Maria stood still, not rushing to approach Titan, but just standing there, looking into the animal's wise eyes. "Hello, Titan," Maria said gently, not wanting to scare the dog. She knew that Titan was not like the other stray dogs she had met, and to build trust with him, she had to be very patient. Titan stood still, not running away, but not approaching either. Instead, he began circling the area where Maria was standing, observing her with a steady gaze, as if he was considering his next move. Maria did nothing too sudden, just standing still to give Titan enough space and time to decide for himself. After a few tense minutes, the Titan finally approached Maria, but still kept a certain distance. Scruff, Jack, and Shadow all watched from a distance, but instead of showing concern or anxiety, they stood still and observed Titan. Scruff, with the instincts of a seasoned wild dog, understood what Titan was feeling. He did not show hostility or fear, but simply stood still, giving Titan space to get acquainted. Jack, though still a little reserved at times, did not react negatively, just a little surprised to see a dog larger than himself. Shadow, though still a new dog to the family, also sensed Titan's tension and watched with sympathy. Lucy, in her role as the mother of the family, did not interfere but just watched from a distance. Lucy's calmness helped the family feel more secure. She did not need to do anything, but her presence made Titan feel more secure. The next day, Maria decided to try again with Titan. She brought food, placed it a little distance away, and sat down. This time, Titan didn't look at her with such suspicion. He quietly approached the food bowl, swallowed the first bite, and then turned to look at Maria. That gesture wasn't complete trust, but it was an important sign. Titan was starting to feel that not everyone wanted to harm him. Titan didn't rush to finish his food, but ate it slowly, as if he was still cautious. However, it was clear that Titan was no longer as cautious as before. As each day passed, Titan came closer to Maria, and their trust began to grow. Sometimes, Titan would sit next to Maria without running away, which was an important step in his integration process. Titan lay next to Scruff, Jack, and Shadow in the garden, all relaxing after a long day. Although Titan wasn't yet as integrated as the other dogs, it could be felt that he was no longer an outsider. He had found a safe place where he could open up. Maria sat down, petting Titan for the first time since its arrival. Although Titan did not react too strongly, its eyes were no longer filled with suspicion, but instead with a hint of peace. This family had grown into a new member, and each animal, despite its painful past, had found a place to belong. A family filled not only with love, but also with patience and trust. One late afternoon, as the sky began to darken, a faint barking was heard from outside the garden. Maria was sitting in the house, out of habit, watching her animals through the window. She heard a strange bark, unlike the barking of the family of dogs living with her. Maria stood up, opened the door, and stepped outside, not knowing that the appearance of this dog would be an important part of the reunion journey that she could not have expected. As soon as Maria stepped out, she saw a white dog, its fur smooth but seemingly quite dirty and tangled. This dog walked hunched over, its eyes sad, its gaze searching for something. Maria slowly approached, and she realized that this was a collie, with its characteristic fur but covered in dirt and emaciated, clearly having suffered many hardships. She looked into the deep eyes of the animal, and suddenly a strong shock rose in her heart. Maria realized it was a missing dog, Luna, the dog she had heard about from the neighbors. Luna had lived with a family before she was lost, but after an unexpected accident, she got lost in a big storm and couldn't find her way home. During the following months, Luna lived a wandering life, struggling with a difficult life, suffering from loneliness and deprivation. Although Luna missed her family very much, she didn't dare to go back, not knowing if she would be welcomed. Luna found a safe place in a nearby forest and lived there, always hiding from humans because she no longer felt safe. However, when she heard barking from Maria's garden, a part of Luna felt familiar, and a strange feeling came over her. Luna couldn't remember her past, but the light in the garden and the warmth she felt from the other dogs made her dare to approach. It was a sign of hope, a longing to be loved and to return to a family. Maria stood still, not moving, just watching the dog as it approached her. She felt a strange connection with Luna from the very beginning, as if this dog belonged to her family. Maria knew that it was not a random encounter. She said softly, "Luna, right?" Maria's words carried warmth and tenderness. Luna stood still, her eyes bewildered, but she did not move away. Luna looked into Maria's eyes, and in that moment, it was as if the dog realized something. It took a step back, then slowly moved closer to Maria. Luna's steps were light, as if she was still uncertain, but a part of her knew that this was a place where she could find safety and love. As Luna approached Maria, she gently stroked its head, and Luna did not react strongly, but just stood still, feeling the care from the woman's hand. In the following weeks, Luna began to integrate into her new family. Although still fearful and cautious, the change in Luna's behavior was obvious. Every day, Maria spent time caring for Luna, feeding her well, and caring for her dirty fur. Luna felt Maria's care and gradually understood that not all humans were bad, that not all the things she had suffered in the past were true. Although Luna still kept a certain distance, she gradually moved closer each day. The other dogs in the family no longer scared Luna. Scruff, Jack, Shadow, and Titan all treated Luna like a family member. Although Luna was not yet fully integrated, the empathy and love shown by the other dogs helped her gradually open up. Maria saw a clear change in Luna. One morning, when all the dogs in the family were playing in the garden, Luna took the initiative to join in. She ran after Jack and Scruff, although she was a little hesitant at first. However, the important thing was that Luna was no longer afraid, and she began to feel like she was part of this family. This change did not happen in a day, but over a long journey that Maria and Luna went through together. One evening, Maria sat next to Luna, looked into the dog's eyes, and felt the happiness deep inside her. Luna had returned, not just a missing dog, but an indispensable part of this family. Maria knew that this was a miracle, a touching event that only love and patience could create. Now there was no missing member. Luna lay among Scruff, Jack, Shadow, and Titan in the garden, where all the dogs were relaxing after an afternoon of playing. Maria sat nearby, her gentle eyes looking at the perfect picture of her family. Love, patience, and trust helped them find each other and become a real family. Luna, despite a painful and lonely past, found a safe place to belong. This is not only a story about a dog's reunion with its family, but also a story about animals finding love and protection in a challenging world. Maria's family is no longer separate members, but a close-knit community where each animal plays an important role in each other's lives. If you feel that this story of love, loyalty, and patience has touched your heart, don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel to continue accompanying us on the next journeys. We will bring more touching and inspiring stories, helping you feel more deeply about the world around you and the meaningful values of life. Share this story with your friends and family so that love and compassion can spread to everyone. Together, we will create a strong community where people are always ready to support, protect, and love each other, just like the animals in this story. Thank you for joining us. Stay tuned so you don't miss the next great stories. Remember, love and loyalty can always change the world. Are you ready? See you in the next videos.